Good morning. Thank you for joining us here today on this 2-year anniversary of the attack on the home of Regina Nicholas and her husband, Dennis Tuttle, by members of HPD's Narcotic Squad 15. We're here today with John Nicholas, the brother of Regina Nicholas, here from Natchitoches, Louisiana, and his wife, Patricia. I'm also joined, and I'm Mike Doyle, by the way, co-counsel for the family of Regina Nicholas. I would advise that Boyd Smith, counsel for the family of Dennis Tuttle, will also be available by phone later, and I can share his contact information as well if you don't already have it. Chuck Bork from St. Martin and Bork in Houma, Louisiana is also here. Hi Bui with We the People, as well as hopefully some of the neighbors and friends that some of y'all have already visited with, Esmeralda Becerra and Sarah Sanchez, who can share the Regina Nicholas that they all knew as their friend, neighbor, babysitter, matron of honor, and longtime neighbor in the Pecan Grove community that they lived in for so long and built so many great relationships. As you know, we're here on the second anniversary really because so far, despite this family's best efforts going to over 5 courts, there remain so many questions unanswered, so many facts that have been concealed and continue to be concealed by the City of Houston, by the decisions from the top down about what they're not going to share, the answers that they refuse to give to the basic facts about what happened before, during, and probably most important, after the attack by this squad on the home of Regina Nicholas and her husband. One of the things that's been incredibly frustrating, on top of just the sheer pain of losing your loved ones this way, is the promises of transparency, the promises that they would get to the bottom of this, that there would be accountability, that they would know the answers. And yet, this family has been forced, despite their best efforts, literally for almost 18 months of trying not to have to file a lawsuit. They've been put in a position where the only way we're going to get to the bottom or the top of what really is going on and continues to go on in this city and with this police department is by filing a civil action. If you haven't already received a copy of the complaint, I think it lays out the picture that with the family's independent investigation, including an extensive forensic evaluation of the scene by Michael Maloney, formerly with NCIS, which revealed that there had been significant evidence just abandoned, left perhaps never to be revealed about what really happened there, that didn't line up with the story that we've heard and has never been retracted, never changed about the assault on Regina and her husband. And what we also know is that in this case, after 2 years of fighting, there's still some very basic questions that can and should be answered today by the Chief of Police, Art Acevedo, and if he won't do it, just simply ordered by the mayor, these basic facts. And they're really simple. One of the things that we heard repeatedly, even after the FBI confirmed that these weren't drug dealers, this was a family of folks that were part of their community, productive parts of the community, a Navy veteran, someone who took care of their neighbors, cared about their community. Why were they there? We were promised that there's a reason, but I'm just not going to share it. That needs to stop. We were promised that this true story we heard about officers needing to protect each other because of this armed assault by Dennis Tuttle and Regina Nicholas. We know from the independent forensic evaluation that in this case, the physical evidence shows that that doesn't line up. That in fact, Regina Nicholas was fatally wounded at or on her couch in her own home by a Houston police officer firing a semi-automatic weapon through a wall of a house from a position where he couldn't see her. We know that in Memphis, Tennessee, when an officer did that and shot and killed an unarmed woman, Breonna Taylor, the police department and its chief fired that officer within days, and he was indicted for reckless conduct. Here, whoever that person is that's still unrevealed, unknown, hidden, he's called a hero. We know that the physical evidence also indicates a significant indication of the likelihood of friendly fire. Because what we haven't seen, because the ballistic evidence that's at the heart of getting to the bottom of this remains concealed. There's really nothing we've seen, nothing that's been put forward, all that's been hidden that indicates that Dennis Tuttle actually ever fired or even had a weapon on him during this event. There's no excuse that we can hear at this point to put this family continue through this. Questions about how was this unit allowed to do again and again. And as outlined in the complaint, what happened was not an accident by two bad apples. This was the culmination of years and years of preying on our communities, in all kinds of communities. And it wasn't an accident that they targeted this mostly Latino community. That was where this unit did its work, and did its work less than 2 months before in a raid that fortunately didn't end in a death. But this was not something that happened because two bad apples caused it. This happened because, at least from the information available, a lieutenant, Marcia Todd, gave some kind of targeting information that we know wasn't truthful, wasn't honest about whether this family had anything to do with drug dealing, at least according to the FBI. And we know that this lieutenant was actually a member of the team targeting this house. We know that the U.S. Marshal was there shortly thereafter. We know there was at least one unidentified civilian with the chief of police as they sat there at the scene and did whatever happened at the scene. And we still have no answers, no explanation for why, at least 30 minutes after the raid, if we're to believe what we've been told, there were two unknown shots, an indication of another event leading to both suspects down. And there's no explanation for why somebody, at some point in time, put a weapon against an inside wall and fired two shots directly against the wall. We heard a lot about this week heroes. I think we absolutely have heroes that go out in law enforcement. We have heroes like John Nicholas, who's a fire chief who works for the Louisiana State Police. We have people that put their lives on the line, and I think that when you call someone heroes, when the facts don't support it, when on the one hand you call them heroes, on the other, we're not going to reveal the facts, the ballistic evidence, the real truth about what happened, what you really do is tarnish those heroes that are out there protecting us, that are protecting our communities, that are protecting our nation. And what's clear in this case is that the city, by forcing the family to do this after making them go to 5 different courts, month after month, just not even answer basic questions that we all need to know in this community to be able to know how far does this corruption go? Has it really been addressed? That when they go through all that, it appears that we have a situation where we have someone who's a woman, Joanne Nicholas, who's in her 80s. And if they think that they're going to outlast her, if they think they're going to stop her from what really is something heroic, this woman's actually survived COVID already. They're wrong. This family's not going to stop. This family's not going to stop. I don't believe this community has. But what's really disturbing most of all is not just that it's come to this point, but this could stop today. This, and I don't think anybody feels uncomfortable in calling at this point a cover-up, with two people that we trust to do the right thing, that we trust when they say they're transparent. Chief Ardo Veda today could release this ballistics information. He could release the facts, this physical evidence. He could do it today. And if he won't do it, the mayor could do it. It's in the power of both those men today to stop this prolonged, continued evasion, excuse about what we all need to know. John Nicholas is going to visit with you all a little bit. We will take questions at the end. Thank you.
Sir, can I get your name and your title, please?
Sure. Mike Doyle, lawyer for the co-counsel for the family of Regina Nicholas.
My name is John Nicholas. I'm the brother of Regina Nicholas. This is a sad day for our family. 2 years ago, on this date, every morning, my sister sent a devotional script of some type. She texted to my mother every morning. That afternoon, sometime before 4 o'clock, she had called my mother. We live in North Louisiana. They was giving out ice. She said, "Did my brother check on you?" She said, "Oh, yeah." She says, "Well, okay, I'm going to go take a nap." And she laid on the couch. She had just come in from the grocery store. She laid on the couch after she called my mother, and 30 minutes later or thereof is when this tragedy happened. My mother is 86 years old, just like Mr. Doyle said. She survived the COVID back in Thanksgiving. She's not going to quit. She asks me every day. I let her see some of the news things. She says, "It's been 2 years now. Are they going to ever tell us what happened?" The police chief always says they had a reason to be there. I want to know why, she says. And that's just about every day I talk to her. "Have you heard any news from Houston?" So it's taking a real toll on her, but she's not backing down, she said. She's going to stay as long as she gets answers. She wants to know. I've been a volunteer fire chief for over 20 years. Matter of fact, next month will be 25 years. I've worked for the Department of Public Safety in Louisiana for 20 years, and I've been an EMT for over 20 years. I've been on drug bus, all kinds of scenes with the local law enforcement. All law enforcement are that bad. Probably 90-something% are the good guys to protect everyone. But it looks like here, we had some bad apples. You know, that day this happened, at 5:30 in the morning, my mother was calling, and at the same time she was calling, a Natchitoches Parish Sheriff deputy, which I knew, was knocking on our door. He asked my wife, who was already up, "Is John here?" And she said, "Yes, he's on the phone with his mother." So he said, "He already knows." She said, "Yes, I think so." My mother said the police was there giving her the sad news that my sister Regina and her husband Dennis Tuttle had been shot and killed. We didn't know who did it at the time or anything. So I told her I would be there in a few minutes. She says, "No hurry. The lady policeman that's here said she would stay till someone got there." That right there shows you have a good policeman, because she was willing to stay there after she got off with my mother. So all police are not bad. It's just a few. We went there later on that day, and we was watching the world news. Chief Aceveda and the union president, which I can't think of his name, was on the TV, world news, calling them scumbags and whatever. Other names I don't remember. But I was sitting there with my mama, and tears come to their eyes, saying she wasn't a scumbag. And I agreed with her. As I said previous, I've got years of experience. I'm not a law enforcer, but I work with them every day. And as an EMT, I've seen people shot and killed. But I've never seen nothing like this. I've been on drug bust. And they keep saying Dennis was shooting at them. Well, I saw the pictures of the original autopsy. He wasn't nowhere close to the door. He was laying back towards the kitchen and the living room area in the floor, close to the dog. And she was laying on the couch. The position I saw didn't look like the way they described it in their story. And they kept saying, a revolver. Where is that revolver? I read the inventory list, just like just about most of the media got a hold to. I never saw a .357 listed, nor any type of revolver. I always call big guns. Shotgun, 30-06. They named a few of them. So, also, if he was standing at the door, these are supposed to be professionals. How did they let him shoot four of their own? If you want to take care of your own team, they should have shot him as soon as he came to the door. That ain't the way it happened. That's the way they say it happened. Another thing to add. You shoot somebody in the neck or the face with a revolver, they probably ain't going to survive, especially at close range. This picture right here shows blood on the wall on the other side. Dennis never came outside, from what I understand. So who shot that fella? Looks like to me, his own team member. My question today is to Chief Acevedo and the mayor. This has been going on all over the country. The Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and others. They haven't 100% answered what happened at these locations. But I do know at certain locations, the mayor and the police chief have fired people immediately, and they have apologized to the family. Chief Acevedo says, you got your two people, Goins and Bryant. Leave everybody else alone. Okay, why hasn't he called and apologized? Mr. Nicholas, I'm sorry for your loss, for your mother, and you. We had two guys that made a mistake. We haven't heard anything. It's like Mr. Doyle said. They could stop this today. It's been 2 years. He keeps saying, no stone turned, or whatever he says. I'm not really sure. But we haven't seen that. All we hear, heroes. I don't call these Squad 15 heroes because my sister and her husband was not the only family that they upset their lives. Some went to jail. They shouldn't. My question is, Chief Acevedo keeps saying, we had a reason to be there. It's taken you 2 years to find that reason? Me and my mother would like to know. You know the reason. Why can't we know the reason? I believe he knew exactly what went on because he said he was there. He was there to cover up. Who knows? But we want answers. We're not going to quit till we get answers. If we get an answer in one day or 10 years from now, my mother says she will live till she gets an answer. That's all I have to say.
My name is Chuck Bork. As Mr. Doyle told you, I'm co-counsel with him, representing the Nicholas family in this matter. I'll be brief. I just want to go back over a few things. 2 years ago today, Joanne Nicholas received a call that no mother wants to receive. Received a call that her daughter, Regina, was killed as she laid on the couch of her home on Harding Street. Ms. Nicholas then learned that her daughter was killed as her home was raided by members of the narcotics unit from HPD. If she wasn't shocked enough by that news, next thing she did is she sees on the television Chief Acevedo proclaiming that her daughter and her son-in-law were running a major heroin operation out of the home, and that's why the home was raided. That's why they were killed. Added on fuel to the fire, Joe Grimaldi, the then president of the police union here, got on, referred to her daughter and son-in-law as dirtbags that HPD was going after. Yes, there was some relief in the Nicholas family when a week or so later they learned that there probably wasn't a major heroin operation being run out of the house, that they weren't drug dealers, and that this went down. Their daughter died, or her daughter died, John's sister died, because of corruption in the police department. But as John said, what they've never heard, and the mama keeps asking, Miss Nicholas keeps asking, they've never yet heard an apology or any words of remorse from the city of Houston or Chief Acevedo. Instead, Chief Acevedo initially doubled down when the word came out about corruption in his police department of, yeah, that's true, but we had a reason to be there. As John said, they've never told us that reason. So where are we now? We're 2 years down the road. John gets regular calls from his mother. Why did this happen? We've gone through every channel possible to find out answers as to why it's happened, and the police department and city have fought us at every step of the way. It's time to provide some answers. Show us what your testing showed. Show us basic answers. Were the police officers wounded by friendly fire? How did this happen? The Nicholas family deserves an answer, and it's time for that answer to be provided. Thank you for coming out today, and we'll stand by now for any questions you may have. Okay.
Chuck or Mike, are you guys going to try to call Acevedo as a witness? This goes to trial?
Yeah.
We know, at least from public appearances, that Chief Art Acevedo actually said, and I believe it was in August 2019, when I got to the scene, there was something there because I'm a professional that I knew there was something wrong. Well, obviously, what he saw, what he did, what he was part of, what was going on at the scene, certainly would make him a witness that'd be important in any trial.
Okay, and another quick question. There's been a lot of rhetoric that's got thrown around about this case over the last 2 years. Could you address criticism from the union and the police department related to your relationship with Kim Ogg and, repping her office in the Arkema case and, their accusations of, a relationship there or, that she's helping you in your lawsuit, basically?
Yeah, I did hear some reports on that. I think you had covered some of that. I think it's real simple. If anybody had a calendar, they would know better than to make that kind of accusation. Our firm was happy to help the Environmental Crimes Division at the district attorney's months before this happened. And we volunteered our time and helped the district attorneys on that case. So if you just look at a calendar, months before this happened, months before our firm was asked to get involved, and they were alleging there was some kind of concerted effort before it even happened, I think anybody with a calendar knows how silly that is. And the fact is, they do their job, we do our job. The filing this week, they're doing their job in uncovering, but whether it helps our case or not, there's an open question because we still don't know at this point. They're still concealing how in the world does the physical evidence that the family had to go out and uncover that Regina Nicholas was shot by an officer, how does that line up with the fact that officer's still sitting out there uncharged? It doesn't.
And just for clarification, the Tuttle family attorneys also, they're also filing a lawsuit, they're going to be adjudicated separately?
Yeah, so the Tuttle family, represented by Boyd Smith and Mike Gallagher, filed a case. I anticipate, because that's the way it should work, that they'll be consolidated into one case.
And just following up a little bit about what Cynthia was saying is, Rusty Harden representing the officer who was charged with murder earlier this week. What are you guys believing that happened, his role in the death? Are you guys...
I don't think Rusty Harden was there.
Okay. Rusty also said that basically he feels like they indicted it to help your case, and that this whole thing is just somehow him trying to, help pay back you guys to aid in what do you think of that?
And I think it goes to what I talked about before. If you put a calendar, our work was long before this ever happened. So that just doesn't make sense. And the reality is, whether or not our firm had volunteered to do something to help the folks in this county, for example, a deputy with the Harris County Sheriff's Department who still is waiting on the lung transplant list to help prosecute that crime, doesn't excuse these crimes, this conduct. And if that's the argument, well, I think everybody knows what that means.
And I believe also there are other factual statements that were made by Mr. Harden as the location of Mr. Tuttle at the time he was supposedly shot or didn't shoot, that facts that we know contradict that. As John said, where Mr. Tuttle was found was not in the doorway of the house. He was found in the back part of the house. So there are a lot of factual inconsistencies in statements that are made by both the police department, by representatives of police officers. All this could be cured if the city and the police department would share the basic information about what the investigation showed that day. Going back to Mr. Nicholas's sister, she died from bullet wounds as she laid on the couch. Our independent forensic studies showed that the bullet that killed her was fired by a police officer standing outside of the house, firing through a wall when he could not even see Miss Nicholas.
And Rusty also said, and if you guys can respond to this too, like 2 days ago, I guess, he was saying how they contend that there was a shootout between Mr. Tuttle and his client, and that Mr. Tuttle shot at least 4 officers. Your independent analysis showed he what? Shot or not shot?
Well, I think actually that goes to what I'm really less concerned about is what a lawyer says. What we all need to know is what the physical evidence shows, whether there's any evidence at all of Dennis Tuttle firing a weapon at anybody, because so far there's been no physical evidence. And at this point, there's no legitimate reason that anybody, whether it's the chief of police, whether it's the mayor, that can say, we want to keep hiding that evidence, the physical evidence, because the police officers have a story, and they need to say it, and they said it, and it may change, but the physical evidence that we really all need to know on whether that story lines up, there's no excuse for hiding that. So let's not hear lawyers talk. Let's hear the facts, the physical evidence that they've been hiding. because then we'll have some better idea, not just stories.
And just if I can add, more importantly, we'd like to see the evidence of how did we get to this point? They've told us that Mr. Goins, Police Officer Goins, had been doing this for a period of time. This was not the first time he did this. How far up the chain did this go? They don't want to talk about that. They want to keep ignoring that. But this isn't something where one police officer decided to do something bad on one day, and as a result, 2 innocent people were killed. This is a matter of a group of police officers, a department, and I think the question is, how deep did the rot go? Nobody's wanting to talk about that. They're not wanting to share that information. This didn't happen because Mr. Goins did one bad thing on a day. Let's look at that part of the story. How long had this been going on? How far up the chain did they have knowledge about what led to the horrible events on January 28th of 2019?
Mike, could you talk a little bit just about, you've already taken a bunch of measures to try to get some of this information, like the Rule 202 stuff. Can you just talk a little bit about that in light of today's filing or yesterday's filing?
Sure. I mean, at bottom, the family wanted to do everything possible besides file a civil lawsuit. They followed the open records request. They asked informally. They pled with the chief, can you at least give us why this happened, because you keep doing this? They've gone through 5 different courts. Now that it's a legal process where you can make the city answer questions, and the city has delayed. No reason other than they delayed, and we're now sitting at a federal court for the 5th court, and every step of the way, all we ever heard from the city was, no, we're not giving this information. We're going to keep concealing this information, which, I mean, as Houstonians, we all need to know, how far does this go?
So what happens to the Rule 202 stuff now?
So legally, I mean, so right now, the family's been forced because of the statute of limitations. They had to file this action to make sure they had that right. That right now, as the latest delay, is in the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals. Hopefully that'll be remanded. And then at that point, I guess the judge will determine, because we've now been forced to file that, what happens.
And I was wondering, John, if you can comment to the fact that what the police chief and a lot of the other folks have said is, like, they sort of put all the blame on former Officer Goins. They say, yeah, he did this bad warrant, and that caused everybody to go in. But their point is, hey, once we went in and your brother-in-law started shooting, it made like sort of everything else that happened fair game. How do you square with that when you hear them talk about that?
I believe that's a lie. Like I said earlier, for the pictures that you see, that I saw with the autopsy, I think the story has changed a couple of times since then, the original, and it's just like Mr. Doyle says. Someone knows exactly what happened. I don't think it happened that way. You watch TV or whatever, this is what I think happened, but I can't prove it because I don't know. They could prove it. I think they busted the door down. She was on the couch asleep. And Dennis come from the side room or whatever, and they shot the dog. And once the dog was shot, they said shots fired, and they just started shooting. I think the forensic guy, Mike can correct me, over 20-something bullet holes in the house. Is that correct?
Well, I think, Ms. Shade, to very directly answer your question, that's why concealing the physical evidence, and why, especially when the fact that they left what was likely confirmed to be the fatal bullet, when they just left that there, I think the point is, we've got lots of stories. We've heard lawyers hearing stories, we've heard the chief telling stories, but the physical evidence that we all need to see to get to the bottom of that, There's a reason why they're fighting to conceal that so long and so hard. And I think they hope that it just goes away, that it goes into federal court and nobody ever knows. But the only way we can really know is to look at the physical evidence that they're sitting on, that they know, to really answer these questions, not just lawyer statements or this is what the chief says. Why are they hiding that?
Have you been able to get any information from Kim Ogg's office about, right, you said you talked to Acevedo a lot and you
Well,
sorry, I'm being unspecific. You've requested information from Acevedo's office many times over the last 2 years, and you said they've been a block. Have you received any information from Ogg?
what I can tell you is the one public open records request that we've asked to the DA's office, and I'm not fussing at them because obviously they have a process, we've still never received a response to. And we certainly, because that's what the family cares about, shared the information, the findings, the physical evidence, the ballistics materials that were left there, and we spoke to them at that time. But the fact is that they do their job and we do ours, and without their investigation going along their route, we're not going to stop doing our investigation.
And John, can you just speak to what's been the hardest part the last 2 years to you and your mom?
John, can we get you at the podium? Get a key for this?
Come on, John.
Could you repeat your question, please?
You can just tell us what's it been like with your family. What's the hardest thing for you and your mom the last 2 years?
It's hard. She still has problems. Like you said, she called her every day, in the morning and in the afternoon. She texts me here and there because, we so far couldn't see each other all the time. The hardest part, I think, is to my mama. She still wants to know exactly what happened. She said her daughter wasn't no drug dealer. She helped all the neighbors, take them to the doctor for cancer treatments, babysitting, whatever. My biggest concern is I feel like this is taking a big toll on her. I don't know, but she could take a couple years off of her life. Anybody that loses, especially somebody like that, it's hard. It's hard. She always send you a text to my mother. Sometimes she would send me like pictures like this. She loved her animals. She's always loved animals. So you don't get to see them pictures no more. You don't get to hear my mother say, well, I talked to your sister today. She's doing this or doing that. So it's a change of life. We had to change the way we do things. And it still affects her not getting that call every morning or every evening.
I think we're good, and we'll have some time for other questions outside at this point. And I want to go ahead and turn it over to Hyperly from With the People, who has probably some statement and thing. And we have a copy of the complaint if y'all didn't get it, and we can provide it electronically as well. Thank you for being here.
My name is Hai Bui. Spelling is H-A-I, last name B-U-I. I'm the founder of We the People Organize. Our organization was formed around 2 years ago to support justice for the titles and, of course, to end no-knock raids. And John and Patricia, thank you so much for driving in from Natchitoches. Our team would like to express our deepest condolences to you and your family. And I feel very painful as a Houstonian. I don't feel safe. We want to get to the bottom of all this. So what I did was I wrote a letter this morning. I emailed at 8 o'clock this morning to the MCCA, which is the major city, which is the chief is a part of. It's called the MCCA. And I was just want to highlight to you what I wrote. Today marks the 2-year anniversary of the killing of Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle in a no-knock raid by the Houston Police Department. The city of Houston continues to cover up the facts, including the ballistic reports of the deadly raid. Chief Acevedo's promotion of himself in national news reports as a national expert on such issues and supporter of peaceful protest. We ask you to clarify whether the MCAA supports the cities of Houston's lack of transparency and litigation to keep secret the evidence from the Harding Street killings. During the past 2 years, Chief Acevedo and the Houston City Mayor Sylvester Turner have marched with and met in prayer meetings with other families affected by the police violence. But they have never offered to meet with or apologize to Nicholas and the Tuttle family. Why is this? I have a copy of the letter. I would love to share that with you to the media. My next announcement is that at 2 p.m. today, our team will have a Zoom event, and I'll also provide that. I think I have a copy here for that link, and I also invite the community to join us. Basically, this event will focus on. The title is called "The Virtual Town Hall to Reimagine Law Enforcement, Reimagine Transparency, Accountability, and No More Cover-Ups and Lying to the Judges." In conclusion, again, we demand justice for the Tuttles. Thank you very much.